Behind the boardroom murder and buddy cop dynamics of Rising Sun lies a treasure trove of bizarre production chaos, from robots breaking down in scorching heat to controversial casting wars between director and author. The 1993 thriller predicted deepfake technology decades early, featured a real supermodel as its murder victim, and sparked heated racism debates that nearly overshadowed the film itself. Here are 15 weird facts you didn't know about Rising Sun. Fact 1. Michael Crichton named the hero after Sean Connery. When Michael Crichton sat down to write his 1992 thriller, Rising Sun, he had one actor in mind for the lead role of the wise, Japan-savvy detective, and that was Sean Connery. But Crichton didn't just hope Connery would take the part. He actually built the character's name around the Scottish star. The protagonist is called John Connor, which is essentially an anglicized version of Sean Connery, when you think about how the names sound. According to production trivia, Crichton wrote the part specifically with Connery in mind, and the clever naming choice was intentional from the start. Some crew members joked that Crichton named the character this way so that Connery would instinctively respond to his cues on set, no matter how distracted he might be during filming. The strategy worked perfectly, as Connery signed on to play Captain John Connor and even took on the role of executive producer for the film. The character fit Connery like a glove, a smooth-talking, culturally sophisticated detective who dispenses wisdom and fortune cookie philosophy while navigating the murky world of Japanese-American business relations. Connery's natural charisma and authority made Connor one of the film's strongest elements, even if the movie itself received mixed reviews. It's a fascinating example of an author tailoring a character so specifically to one actor that even the character's name becomes a subtle tribute to the star he envisioned, bringing the role to life on screen. Fact 2. The film predicted deepfake technology rising. Sun deserves credit as one of the earliest films to depict what we now call deepfake technology, decades before the term even existed. The central mystery of the movie revolves around surveillance footage from a murder scene that has been digitally manipulated to frame the wrong person. Tech expert Jingo Asakuma, played by Tia Carrere, analyzes the security disc and reveals that someone has altered the video to change the identity of the person shown committing the crime. This plot point was remarkably ahead of its time, considering the film came out in 1993, when most people had barely heard of the internet, let alone sophisticated video editing technology. The movie shows characters discussing how easy it is to doctor footage and make it look completely real, which is exactly what deepfake technology does today using artificial intelligence and machine learning. Wikipedia even cites Rising Sun as an early example of deepfake representation in popular culture, noting that the film depicted digitally altered personal identities to implicate a competitor. What seemed like futuristic Hollywood invention in the early 90s has become an everyday reality and serious concern in our current era, where deepfakes can spread misinformation, create fake celebrity videos, and even influence elections. The fact that Michael Crichton and the filmmakers understood the potential dangers of manipulated video evidence 30 years ago shows just how prescient this thriller was about the intersection of technology, truth, and power in the modern world. Fact 3. A real supermodel played the murder victim. The beautiful woman found strangled on a boardroom table in Rising Sun wasn't played by just any actress. She was portrayed by Tatiana Patitz, one of the most famous supermodels of the 1980s and 90s. Patitz was part of the legendary Big Five supermodels who dominated the fashion world, alongside Naomi Campbell, Linda Evangelista, Cindy Crawford, and Christy Turlington. She became internationally famous after appearing in George Michael's iconic Freedom 90 music video in 1990, which is still remembered as one of the defining moments of supermodel culture. Vogue called Patitz the quietest and perhaps the most intense of the original supermodels, noting that she was less visible than her peers but possessed a mysterious and unattainable quality. For Patitz, Rising Sun marked her first major film appearance, though her role required her to spend most of her screen time dead. She played Cheryl Lynn Austin, a high-end call girl whose murder sets the entire plot in motion. Despite the limited nature of the role, having such a recognizable face from the fashion world added an extra layer of glamour and tragedy to the character. Potitz continued her modeling career for decades and passed away in January of 2023 at age 56 from breast cancer. Her appearance in Rising Sun remains a curious footnote in supermodel history, a moment when one of fashion's most elegant figures crossed over into Hollywood to play a victim of corporate corruption and sexual violence. Fact 4. The naked sushi scene required days of filming. One of Rising Sun's most notorious scenes involves a woman lying completely naked on the floor while sushi is artfully arranged on her body, a practice known as nyotemori ditui, or body sushi. The actress who performed this scene, Shelley Michelle, later gave an interview describing just how grueling and awkward the filming process was. According to Michelle, the scene took several days to shoot, which meant she had to lie on the floor for hours at a time without any clothes on while the crew worked around her. She noticed that on the first day, crew members kept sneaking glances at her naked body, but eventually they got used to seeing her and stopped staring. Things got even more complicated when real SWAT team members were hired to film the dramatic raid sequence where officers burst through windows into the room. Michelle said these new arrivals would also stare at her initially, but she wasn't shy about the situation and didn't let it bother her. The most dangerous part of filming came when the SWAT team smashed through the windows using real glass rather than the safer breakaway glass typically used in movie stunts. Michelle described how actual glass shards were flying everywhere during the takes, which added genuine danger to an already uncomfortable shooting situation. The whole experience highlights the sometimes absurd and difficult conditions that actors face for brief moments of on-screen spectacle, especially in scenes designed purely for shock value or titillation rather than advancing the plot. Fact 5. Crichton and director had epic screenplay battles. The relationship between author Michael Crichton and director Philip Kaufman became so toxic during Rising Sun's production that Crichton eventually quit the project entirely. The trouble began when 20th Century Fox paid Crichton $1 million for the film rights and hired him to write the screenplay alongside co-writer Michael Backus. After Crichton and Backus delivered what they felt was a faithful adaptation of the novel, the studio decided they wanted changes and brought in Kaufman to direct. That's when things fell apart because Kaufman kept demanding rewrites, 5 separate rewrites, according to production reports. Crichton grew increasingly frustrated with Kaufman's constant script changes and ultimately walked away from the production, with Backus following him out the door. The studio then brought in legendary playwright David Mamet to do uncredited script polishing work, adding even more cooks to an already crowded kitchen. Despite all these writers working on the screenplay, director Kaufman tried to claim sole screenwriting credit for himself, which led to a Writers Guild arbitration hearing. The Guild ultimately ruled that Kaufman's contributions, while significant, were not enough to deny credits to Crichton and Backus, so all 3 names ended up on the final film. The whole messy situation created bad blood that lasted for years, with Crichton publicly distancing himself from the movie and expressing disappointment with how his novel had been adapted and altered by a director he felt had destroyed the story's original intent and message. Fact 6. Crichton opposed Wesley Snipes' casting over race. One of the biggest changes from Michael Crichton's novel to the film version was the decision to cast Wesley Snipes, an African-American actor, in the role of Lieutenant Webster Smith, who was written as white in the original book. This casting choice became a major point of contention between Crichton and director Philip Kaufman, with Crichton arguing strongly against the change. The author made his position clear in interviews and production meetings, stating that in a movie specifically about U.S.-Japan relations, casting a black actor would introduce an entirely separate racial dynamic because of existing tensions between African Americans and Japanese communities. Crichton argued that this additional layer of racial complexity would muddy the film's central theme, which was supposed to focus on Japanese business practices and American economic anxiety in the early 1990s. Despite Crichton's objections, Kaufman and studio executive Joe Roth pushed forward with Snipes, who was a rising action star at the time after his success in films like New Jack City and Passenger 57. The decision to change Smith's race was part of what drove Crichton to quit the project, as he felt it fundamentally altered the story he had written. Looking back, Crichton's argument reveals the complicated and sometimes uncomfortable conversations Hollywood had and continues to have about race, representation, and how casting choices can change a story's meaning. The controversy serves as a reminder that even well-intentioned decisions about diversity in casting can create unexpected creative conflicts when filmmakers have very different visions for how a story should be told. Fact 7. MIT robots kept breaking down in Heat Rising. Sun features a brief scene where the detectives visit a high-tech research facility and viewers can spot unusual hopping robots in the background moving around a tea house and bouncing up a garden path. These weren't special effects. They were actual academic research projects from MIT's Artificial Intelligence Lab, specifically the Legged Locomotion Lab run by Professor Mark Rybert. The robots were designed to hop and maintain their balance using gyroscopes for body attitude sensing and hydraulic pumps for power, with a human operator controlling direction via joystick. While these machines sound impressive, they absolutely were not designed for Hollywood filmmaking. According to one of the MIT graduate students who worked on set, the robots were constantly being modified and tended to break down frequently under normal conditions. Filming in the scorching July sun of the San Fernando Valley turned into an absolute nightmare, with the robot's transputers crashing from heat exposure, gyroscopes getting stuck, and hydraulic fluid leaking everywhere. 3 graduate students and Professor Rybert worked steadily for about a month preparing for Hollywood, then spent 5 brutal days on set and on location, all to capture approximately 15 seconds of footage that appears in the final film. The grad students even appear in the movie wearing white lab coats and pretending to be robot scientists. The production credits thank the MIT Leg Lab and Mark Rybert and his running team for their contribution, which represents an enormous amount of work and technical difficulty for what amounts to barely noticeable background detail that most viewers probably never even noticed. Fact 8. The location doubled as Star Trek's Starfleet Academy. The sleek, futuristic research laboratory that appears in Rising Sun is actually the Donald C. Tillman Water Reclamation Plant in Van Nuys, California, which has one of the most impressive resumes of any filming location in Hollywood. The plant's modernist administration building, designed by architect Anthony J. Lumsden, features such a striking futuristic aesthetic that it has been used in countless science fiction productions over the decades. Most famously, the location served as Starfleet Academy in multiple Star Trek series, including Star Trek: The Next Generation, Star Trek Voyager, and Star Trek: Deep Space Nine. The facility's Japanese garden, which surrounds the main building, made it perfect for Rising Sun's scenes set in Japanese-influenced corporate spaces. The same location also appeared in the 1997 film Austin Powers, International Man of Mystery, the 1996 comedy Biodome, and episodes of television shows like Charmed, Knight Rider, and The Mentalist. For Rising Sun specifically, the water treatment plant stood in for the Hamaguri Building, a fictional high-tech corporate research facility. The production even credits the location by name in the filming locations list as the Japanese Garden at the Donald C. Tillman Water Reclamation Plant. It's a perfect example of how Los Angeles' diverse architecture allows filmmakers to create worlds that span from futuristic academies in space to cutting-edge corporate laboratories in contemporary thrillers, all while actually shooting at a functioning municipal water facility in the San Fernando Valley. Fact 9. A rare American supercar gets destroyed. Rising Sun features one of the rarest and most valuable American supercars ever built, the Vector W8, and then proceeds to wreck it during a brief chase sequence. The Vector W8 was an ultra-exclusive American supercar manufactured from 1989 to 1993, with only 19 examples ever produced for customers. The car was an absolute beast, featuring a 6-liter twin-turbo V8 engine, producing over 600 horsepower, an aluminum honeycomb chassis, and a body made from carbon fiber, Kevlar, and fiberglass. With a top speed exceeding 218 miles per hour, it could compete with Italian exotics from Ferrari and Lamborghini, and it originally sold for $448,000. In the film, the character Eddie Sakamura drives a red Vector W8, which was one of only 3 W8s finished in that color. During a chase scene, the car crashes spectacularly, ending up destroyed. Car enthusiasts watching the movie likely cringed at seeing such a rare automobile get wrecked, even if it was for cinematic purposes. Today, surviving Vector W8s sell for anywhere from $390,000 to over $1.4 million for pristine examples, making the one destroyed in Rising Sun even more painful to watch in retrospect. The film's production notes indicate they used chassis number 003 for filming, which adds specific provenance to this particular car. It's a classic case of Hollywood sacrificing automotive rarity for a few seconds of action, leaving car collectors to wonder if that particular Vector could have been preserved instead of meeting its demise on a rain-slicked road. Fact 10. Connery's dialogue contains a Bond Easter egg. Sharp-eyed fans of Sean Connery's James Bond films will catch a clever reference buried in Rising Sun's dialogue that serves as a direct nod to his most famous role. In one scene, Captain John Connor confronts a bodyguard at Eddie Sakamura's estate, and the intimidating guard informs Connor that he holds a black belt in martial arts, clearly trying to scare off the older detective. Without missing a beat, Connery's character responds with the line, "But of course you are, dear," delivered in his trademark smooth style. This exact phrasing is a direct callback to a famous exchange from the 1971 James Bond film Diamonds Are Forever, where Bond meets a character named Plenty O'Toole at a casino. When she introduces herself by saying, "Hi, I'm Plenty," Bond replies, "But of course you are," in the same dismissive yet charming manner. The Rising Sun reference works as both an inside joke for Connery fans and a character moment that shows Connor's unflappable confidence in the face of physical threats. It's the kind of subtle actor illusion that adds an extra layer of enjoyment for viewers familiar with Connery's entire filmography. The line fits perfectly with Connor's character, who remains calm and collected in every situation, never intimidated by bodyguards, Yakuza enforcers, or corporate executives. Whether this Bond reference was written into the script or added by Connery himself as an ad-lib, it serves as a knowing wink to audiences who have watched the Scottish actor play cool, sophisticated characters who talk their way out of trouble for decades across multiple franchises and genres. Fact 11. The book's killer was completely changed. One of the most significant changes from Michael Crichton's novel to the film adaptation was the complete alteration of the murderer's identity, which fundamentally changed the story's message. In Crichton's original book, the killer is revealed to be Ishiguro, a Japanese corporate executive from the Nakamoto Corporation, and his guilt serves as the climax of Crichton's critique of Japanese business practices and corporate cover-ups. The novel ended with Ishiguro committing suicide, which Crichton intended as a commentary on Japanese corporate honor culture and the lengths to which these powerful corporations would go to protect their interests. However, director Philip Kaufman completely changed this ending for the movie. In the film version, the murderer is Bob Richmond, played by Kevin Anderson, who is an American lawyer working for the Japanese corporation rather than a Japanese executive. Richmond meets a violent end when he is drowned and buried in wet concrete by Eddie Sakamura's Yakuza associates, which is quite different from the book's suicide ending. This change significantly altered the story's controversial anti-Japanese corporate message, making the ultimate villain an American collaborator rather than a Japanese businessman. Kaufman's decision to change the killer's identity was likely part of his effort to tone down the Japan-bashing elements that made Crichton's novel so controversial. The character of Ishiguro still appears in the film, renamed Ishihara, but instead of being the murderer, he simply gets demoted and exiled to a cubicle job back in Japan, which Captain Connor describes as a fate worse than death in Japanese corporate culture, though it's clearly a less dramatic ending than the original novel's climax. Fact 12. Steve Buscemi's character makes no sense. Rising Sun features an appearance by Steve Buscemi as a character officially named Willie the Weasel Wilhelm, and multiple reviewers and viewers have pointed out that his character seems to serve absolutely no purpose in the film's plot. Buscemi appears in several scenes throughout the movie, apparently working as some kind of investigative reporter or private detective who is digging up dirt on Lieutenant Webster Smith. But his storyline never connects meaningfully to the main murder investigation or leads anywhere substantial. One reviewer writing about the film specifically noted that after watching Rising Sun, they still couldn't figure out what Buscemi's character actually was, a journalist, a cop, or something else entirely. Another critic stated that Buscemi's scenes felt like something important had been left out during editing because his presence in the movie doesn't seem necessary. The character nickname Willie the Weasel appears on the official cast list, and there's a scene where he's described as working late at a newspaper office, going to the library to research information about Smith, but none of this investigation pays off or affects the outcome of the story. Most likely, Willie the Weasel was a victim of director Philip Kaufman's notoriously long cuts. Kaufman was known for initially delivering very long versions of his films before trimming them down to meet studio requirements for runtime. During the editing process, entire subplots often get reduced or removed, leaving behind fragmentary character appearances that confuse audiences. Poor Steve Buscemi probably had a much larger role in earlier cuts of Rising Sun, but whatever his character's purpose was, ended up on the cutting room floor, leaving viewers to wonder why the weasel is weaseling around at all. Fact 13. The Jingo romance was added for the movie. The film version of Rising Sun includes a romantic subplot that never existed in Michael Crichton's original novel, and it involves one of the more surprising character relationships in the movie. In the book, the character Jingo Asakuma, renamed from Teresa Asakuma in the novel, is simply a tech expert who helps the detectives analyze the manipulated surveillance footage. However, the filmmakers decided to add a romantic connection between Jingo, played by Tia Carrere, and Captain John Connor, played by Sean Connery, despite the significant age gap between the characters and actors. This relationship reveal comes as something of a twist near the end of the film, when it becomes clear that Connor and Jingo have been romantically involved all along. Some reviewers noted that the relationship doesn't quite make sense, given that the film also develops chemistry between Jingo and Lieutenant Webster Smith, creating an awkward love triangle that wasn't necessary for the plot. One critic mentioned that discovering Connor and Jingo were a couple made them want to rewatch the film to look for glances and subtle interactions they had missed the first time. The romance adds a layer of personal complication to the professional investigation, but it also creates an uncomfortable dynamic where the two male partners end up as rivals for the same woman's affection after finally achieving the buddy cop rapport that the film had been building toward. The addition of this romantic subplot appears to have been part of director Philip Kaufman's efforts to add more personal drama and character depth to what was otherwise a fairly straightforward corporate thriller, though opinions remain divided on whether this change improved the story or just muddled it with unnecessary romantic complications. Fact 14. The film sparked Asian American protests. When Rising Sun premiered in the summer of 1993, it immediately sparked controversy and protests from Asian American advocacy groups who felt the film demonized and stereotyped Asian people. Guy Aoki, a prominent activist and founder of the Media Action Network for Asian Americans, led protests against the film along with other representatives from his organization. The group argued that despite director Philip Kaufman's efforts to tone down the more controversial Japan-bashing elements from Michael Crichton's novel, the movie still presented Japanese characters as sinister, mysterious foreigners engaged in corporate warfare against innocent Americans. The Christian Science Monitor wrote in its review that although Rising Sun wasn't a hotbed of deliberate racism, it contained a current of insensitivity that would likely feed anti-Asian sentiments rather than dispel them. The controversy extended beyond just the film's release, as Asian American groups had already been protesting against Crichton's original novel when it came out in 1992, calling it xenophobic and fear-mongering. Entertainment Weekly covered the controversy with an article titled "Rising Sun Stirs Controversy," and the Los Angeles Times ran a piece headlined, "Charges of Racism Mar Rising Sun." Opening. The timing of the film's release was particularly sensitive, coming at the height of American anxiety about Japanese economic power and corporate buyouts of American companies. The protests highlighted the difficult position Hollywood found itself in when adapting controversial source material. Kaufman tried to soften the book's anti-Japanese themes by making most of the villains American collaborators rather than Japanese executives, but critics argued this wasn't enough to overcome the fundamentally problematic premise of presenting Japanese business practices as threatening and alien. Fact 15. Kaufman fought for sole screenwriting credit. After all the battles over Rising Sun's screenplay during production, director Philip Kaufman created one final controversy by attempting to claim sole screenwriting credit and deny credit to the other writers who had worked on the script. Despite the fact that Michael Crichton had been paid $1 million to adapt his own novel and had written an initial draft with co-writer Michael Backes, and despite David Mamet coming in to do additional uncredited polishing work, Kaufman felt that his 5 rounds of rewrites and extensive changes to the script meant he deserved to be listed as the only screenwriter. This kind of dispute is not uncommon in Hollywood, where Writers Guild of America rules determine who gets credit based on specific criteria about how much each writer contributed to the final screenplay. Kaufman's claim went to Writers Guild arbitration, which is the official process for resolving credit disputes. The Guild reviewed all the different drafts and compared them to determine each writer's contribution to the finished film. Ultimately, the arbitration ruled against Kaufman, deciding that while his contributions were significant enough to earn him a screenwriting credit, they were not substantial enough to deny credits to Crichton and Backes. The final film therefore lists 3 screenwriters, Philip Kaufman, Michael Crichton, and Michael Backes in that order, with Kaufman's name appearing first since he was also the director. Both Crichton and Backes had already quit the production by this point and were reportedly angry about how the adaptation had turned out, so the credit dispute just added insult to injury in what had become a thoroughly unpleasant creative process for everyone involved, except perhaps Kaufman himself, who got to direct the film according to his vision despite